Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode number 114, and for today's episode, I'm going to be reviewing a label that I discovered by way of my dear friend, Matt Salcedo. Matt is really into ambient music more than I am, and he, at some point during our friendship that actually spawned because of the channel in probably the last 2 years we became friends, he sent me a recommendation for an Analogue Attic record, and I had never heard of the label up until that point. Analogue Attic is an Australian-based label that is run by Albrecht. And Alex is an ambient producer that is sort of in the same vein as somebody like Francis Harris, where he generally, it seems like the foundation of the tracks for both Francis Harris and Alex Albrecht are fundamentally ambient, and then it seems to me as if the beats are built on top of the ambient underlying structures. So a lot of producers, I think, would start their track if they were making they were going to produce a new track. They might start with the kick and the percussion and then add in the ambient sprinkles later. Whereas I just get the feeling with Analogue Attic that they care the most about the ambient underlays, and then maybe they decide afterwards whether or not they're going to add a beat onto them. So that's the theme of the label. Matt, thank you for putting me onto this label because it's a little niche-y sort of outlier in the electronic music scene, but I really do adore their productions. Although the fundamentals of the tracks are ambient, like I said, there's other flavors that are mixed in a very sophisticated manner where you get a vibe of maybe tech house or progressive house or just bordering on dub techno, not in the true sense, but in some of the elements that are used or the vibe that's created. There's maybe some deep techno, so you just really never know what you're going to get with these records, and I find it very hard to pigeonhole anything on this label into a specific genre. I will say that the tracks that have beats, I mean, it's a steady 4/4 beat, 4 to the floor, but beyond that, it's very hard to just like put them into specific categories, and you'll see a lot of different flavors of electronic music on each EP, so you just really never know what you're going to get, and I really find it to be rewarding to listen to them. So that being said, I have 5 records from the Analogue Attic Recordings label that I want to review with you today, and I hope you enjoy them. There's 20 releases in the label's catalog altogether. I have 5, and I know that there's some other serious winners out there. So if you guys have any that you've really attached to over the years, obviously comment down below because I'm always looking for a new recommendation. My first pick for you is from 2016, and it's a producer named Udmo. And Udmo did a couple of releases on Analogue Attic. I only have this one, and it's called Open Water. Now, I first read a very funny review about Open Water on Discogs where the reviewer said that if it came down to saving this record or his girlfriend in a house fire, he would be playing Udmo's Open Water at his girlfriend's funeral, which I thought was hilarious. That's a hilarious review. And I was like, maybe there's a little bit of hyperbole in there. Maybe he's just, he just maybe this record caught him on a good day and he's exaggerating. But I did buy it and I took a chance on it. And when I listened to Open Water, I really understand why the guy said that. So the intro to the track is a long ambient segment, possibly 2 to 3 minutes in length. And when it finally kicks in, you're treated to a very thumpy, progressive tech house type beat, and the element that just totally sells this for me is the percussion. There's a wet laser sound that just hits absolutely perfectly with the rest of the elements in here, and it's one of those 8/16 beat loops that I could just listen to forever and ever. absolutely adore the percussion in this track, and I know that's weird to just, you know, lock in on one element like that, but when you're out on the dance floor and you have a track really catch you off guard like that, it's usually just one of those situations where all of the elements are sitting together perfectly and it just creates the perfect loop. My next pick for you is also from 2016. This is from the artist Rings Around Saturn, who also has a couple of releases on Analog Attic. And my choice here is the track Biological. I love that name. That's just a cool name, Biological. And like I said, with Analog Attic, you never know what you're going to get. And I feel like this is actually a throwback to the trance era of 1998 and 1999. There's a specific element in here that I love in this track, and it's the middle bass. So a lot of trance producers that I've noticed over the years, they fall into two categories, in my opinion, right? It's either trance that has a chug or trance that lacks chug. And this has the chug element. Whenever I listen to trance that doesn't have a chuggy factor to it, I find it to be excruciating. And to think of an example, I would say Paul Van Dyk's productions after 2005-ish, where I feel like I really just kind of like gave up on like him in that genre. That's where like the trance just started to get really fluffy and it didn't have that grimy middle bass to it. But somebody like John Double O Fleming, he always found tracks, even, you know, heading up into 2009 and 2010, to put in his sets that had that techiness to them. And this has that. And now moving up to 2018 in the Analog Attic catalog, I'm going to review a release here by artist named Melquiades, and that's an Alex Albrecht alias. I didn't even realize it when I recorded this episode, but I have all of the Alex Albrecht singles. I like sort of like grabbed one here and grabbed one there. And I didn't realize that I had accidentally amassed, I think he has 6 records in his single catalog, and they're all good. This one really stands out because to me, it's the closest thing that you'll find to progressive house on the Analog Attic label. And the track that I like here is called The Bluff. If you listen to The Bluff, the first thing that came to my mind when I listened to it is some of the releases that come out on Shanti Radio Moscow or All Day I Dream. And if you've followed my channel, the reason I haven't reviewed Shanti Records or really any All Day I Dream is because they've become really formulaic. I always called it progressive house. Now people are starting to call it deep organic house. Whatever you're calling it, I mean, I think if you're honest with yourself, those labels are just absolutely mulching the shit out of that sound. And like, I made an effort to just stop buying them because it's like, I feel like I'm like falling for a trap where it has really nice cover art and it's kind of seductive on first listen. And then when you put them on the shelf, you like immediately forget what they sounded like. So I'm really trying to stay away from that genre. But getting back to a more positive note, The Bluff is basically has the underlying feel of a Shanti release. specifically in the claps that hit on the 2 and 4. If you listen to that element, that's what makes this shanty-esque. But after that, it really diverges away and delves into the more sophisticated sound that I was trying to describe, that Analog Attic is known for bringing. And I just love the like tick-a-tock, the tick-a-tock percussion that lays in the background of this track. I think it's something that is, you know, maybe pulled from a sound bank that you just wouldn't expect to be mixed with the underlying tech house, progressive house beat. So really sophisticated sound here, and like I said, one of the closest things to progressive that you'll find for Analog Attic. In 2019, Alex Albrecht released this. This is his Lanterns release, and this is a good example of showing you how on Analog Attic you can have combinations of ambient and deep house and tech house flavors all on one release. My pick for you on this is Neon Canal. I love Neon Canal because when I sit and listen to it, it takes me back to those early Francis Harris records on Scissor and Thread, like his Leland album and the album that came out before that, where it's just sort of like a little bit melancholy. And in this release, particularly on Neon Canal, I love the deep digging bass line in here. This is just one of those satisfying records that when I picture myself listening to this, I don't know if you've ever had a summer morning where you wake up and it's warm and muggy and you can't see the sun for anything. And then as you go later into the morning, you start to catch a glimpse of the sun through the clouds, and you kind of have the revelation that you're about to break out of the clouds and head into a nice sunny day in the afternoon. That's what this record reminds me of. And to close out the episode, one of the strongest releases that the label has ever done, in my opinion. This is a banger from front to back. This is the Citizen Maze EP. I'm just trying to figure out what this cover art is. It looks like it could be, I don't know, maybe like a supernova explosion, or it could also be some kind of maybe a jellyfish. I'm not sure what that is, but I really like it. My pick for this release is the B2. There's a track called Strange Array on here. This thing is the epitome of depth. When I listen to music now, I have a little subwoofer that I have in my music room, and I used to have it across the room, and I now moved it under my table where I sit, and a lot of times I'll put my feet up on it so that I'm actually like feeling the bass come off the subwoofer. This track is just an absolute bath in low frequencies. It's one of these, it's the kind of track that I think would absolutely stun people on the dance floor, but because it doesn't have a vocal snippet or something that's like really obviously recognizable, it would be one of those tracks that was like fleeting and you were trying to talk to the DJ about it and describe it, but like you wouldn't have anything specific to grasp onto. It has a very subtle acid undertone in it, but the overall vibe is almost like that Icelandic deep techno that you would get from an artist like Thor, or that AE label. Somehow it all comes together in like a dark fashion, but it's also overlaid with some of the Balearic vibes that you'll find on the other Analog Attic records. So you have this kind of juxtaposition of darkness and bright, but I think the dark wins out. I think overall this is like late night material, 3, 4, 5 a.m., and something for the dance floor to truly get lost in. All right, that's all for today's Analog Attic episode. Please make recommendations down below. And Alex Albrecht, if you're checking out this episode, thank you so much. And Matt Salcido, thank you for putting me onto this wonderful Australian label. I really appreciate it. That's all for today, guys. Take care.